The ultimate fictional biohack is a staple of comic books, discovering a magical substance like Dionysium or taking a dip in a Lazarus pit to achieve instant, cost-free immortality. The prime example of this fictional chemistry is the Joker's origin story, where falling into a basin of deadly chemical waste miraculously creates a permanent healing factor instead of a gruesome death. Real-world academics have actually analyzed the comic book formula for that basin, which consists of roughly 34% sulfuric acid and 11% sodium hydroxide. In reality, jumping into that chemical mixture does not grant you a healing factor. It instantly melts organic tissue and bone into a lifeless sludge. But real, highly sought-after regenerative therapies do exist, like the Wolverine peptide stack, which combines BPC-157 and TB-500 to signal cellular repair. This creates a serious dilemma for independent bioresearchers and startups. How do you practically acquire these cutting-edge materials for testing without a billion-dollar pharmaceutical budget? Choosing the wrong acquisition path won't turn a biohacker into a supervillain, but it will expose them to lethal chemical toxicity or instantly bankrupt their startup. This comparison matrix maps out exactly how comic book science stacks up against the punishing constraints of an actual laboratory. In fiction, the cost is free, the purity is guaranteed by magic, and the risk is just the occasional bout of demonic possession or insanity. In reality, synthesizing compounds carries crushing capital costs, purity requires strict HPLC verification, and the risks are financial ruin and toxic chemical exposure. Because demonic meteorites don't exist, real researchers must rely on hard chemistry and brutal financial trade-offs to source their compounds. The romantic idea of mixing up a proprietary compound in a private garage lab blinds many researchers to the grueling financial hazards of actual biomanufacturing. Let's explore option 1, building a private lab from the ground up for in-house peptide synthesis. To even begin, you must purchase an automated peptide synthesizer, liquid chromatography setup, and a lyophilizer. This scorecard shows the immediate financial impact. That hardware alone demands between $40,000 and $65,000 in capital expenditures. This initial capex hit severely drains a startup's seed funding before a single biological test is ever run. The financial drain is only the first hurdle. The second is the severe physical danger inherent to the chemical cleavage process. Separating the finished peptide chain from its resin support requires bathing it in a strong acid cocktail, like trifluoroacetic acid, which produces highly toxic, corrosive vapors. Safely venting and mitigating that chemical waste demands high-end containment systems. This is the exact type of expensive infrastructure that DIY biohackers often skip to save money. Furthermore, relying on budget, uncalibrated home lab equipment inevitably leads to inconsistent chemical batch runs. Poor in-house manufacturing completely compromises your chemical purity. If your compound is contaminated, every downstream biological test you run is mathematically and scientifically useless. Option 2 bypasses the lab entirely, sourcing raw bulk powder directly from established international contract manufacturers. This results in a massive cost reduction. Bulk research peptides trade like commodity chemicals, dropping your price tag to roughly $100 to $250 per gram. It also provides an immediate quality assurance benefit. These compounds arrive with professional verification, guaranteeing 98% or higher purity out of the box. The main trade-off of outsourcing is losing end-to-end oversight of the actual manufacturing process. However, this loss of control is a strategic advantage. It shifts the researcher's focus away from managing volatile, dangerous chemistry. As this budget pie chart illustrates, outsourcing allows a startup to reallocate its budget directly into core systems integration and the actual application of the therapy. Shifting your funds from lab hardware capex into pure testing creates a leaner, high-margin business model that is significantly more attractive to early-stage investors. This flowchart frames the final build versus buy strategic choice. First, are you developing entirely novel proprietary chemical sequences? If yes, you must build in-house for strict intellectual property security and operational control. Be aware, this build path is strictly for heavily funded institutional labs. For everyone else, we move to the second node. Is your funding greater than $250,000? If not, the only viable option is to outsource the synthesis. Outsourcing is the mandatory path for independent bioresearchers. It maximizes your budget and completely removes the deadly risk of unauthorized chemical containment. The myth of the lone rogue scientist cooking up a miracle cure in a basement remains persistent in startup culture. But trying to replicate comic book science in a garage inevitably leads to massive financial failure or severe physical harm. Real scientific breakthroughs rely on leveraging large-scale professional industrial infrastructure to safely provide the base chemical components. Leave the bathtub acid mixing to Gotham City villains. In the real world, let professionals handle the chemistry so you can focus on the cure.